Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an instructive game to share with you from the 2024 Chess Olympiad. This is from round 1. On the white end, FIDE master Mendez Machado, representing Panama, playing against Levon Aronian, representing the United States. So about a 600-point underdog is Machado. The ratings, Machado 21-22, Aronian 27-29. On board, Sicilian defense, Rossolimo attack. Now, when white pushes in the center here with e5, Aronian goes to the edge. This is the first move that grabbed my attention with this game. I was more used to seeing knight g4, counterpunching e5. He goes to the edge in this one. Why? Well, it's revealed soon enough. He has this idea to fink out of the knight. A temporary pit stop from this post. Couple options. Doesn't make use of either just yet. He goes with h6 here. In the computer's eyes, knight e6 is considered best. Now, why is maybe in this situation with Aronian being a huge favorite, why is maybe knight e6 not best? Well, maybe this is an idea for white. Exchanging another piece, simplifying the position somewhat. Okay, a strategy may be to keep more pieces on board, being the higher rated player. So it's h6 here, ruling out any knight g5. Knight e4. Follow up now is b6. Computer once more likes knight e6 here, but Aronian has a different idea altogether. He's in fact not going to the e6 square, so he goes with knight f5. So this was a surprise to me. I thought when I saw h6, you're doing that so you could play knight e6 without the jump to g5. A different setup in mind. Aronian, the ever creative player, what's his plan here, having the knight on f5? Well, for one, do know the e6 square remains open for the bishop. Maybe bishop goes there and starts poking around at the light squares at some stage. Additionally, if we consider a difference between these two knight posts, well, after this follow-up g5, the knight guards h4 from f5, doesn't it? This may make this idea to push the g-pawn a bit more attractive. If g4 is successful, this knight doesn't have the option to go to h4. Sometimes this can be, in general, an idea, a sort of blockade against further pawn storm on the king's side. No longer an option for white with the knight on f5. From here, white plays queen a4. If white tries to hold up this pawn advance with, let's say, h3, that's probably asking for trouble. This can certainly be an idea, looking for the g file to soon open up. These guys stay home. Good decision. White focuses on c6. How to defend? It's queen c7 here. Pop quiz. How would you reply here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, queen c7 is in fact a losing move. What is better than queen c7? Bishop b7 in the computer's eyes, not really ideal though. Pulling the bishop off of the e6 square. What's the problem having the queen on c7? Well, white follows up now in the best way with g4. This is a losing position now for black. The question for Aronian at this stage is, what's going to give me the best chances to win? How to complicate from here? This knight cannot move from here. The computer says go ahead and move the knight, but Aronian comes up with a different idea. If you move the knight here, let's say knight h4, white can take the knight and then follow up with knight d6. And what do? If you take the knight, you're going to lose the queen to this discover check. And if you have to run with the king, forget about it. There goes your f-pawn, rook is hit, e6 nearby, bishop f4. The king, the black king, will not survive this. Aronian's try after g4 is queen b7. Now this next line here may sound odd, but the queen is x-raying f3. This is one of the two big kingside weaknesses. The other, after pawn captures knight, the bishop observes the h6 square. This is where black's compensation, I guess we can say compensation, this is where his chances, let's say, lie with these light square weaknesses, and black having an unopposed light square bishop. Let's see how he tries to stir up trouble to get back in this game. d4, there we go, poking around at the light squares. Capture on d4, knight b3. This is a nice move. Instead of simply capturing with the pawn, white knows at this point if black takes on c3, Aronian castles here, but if black takes on c3, this would open up an attack against the bishop. Knight f6 would be a move, check, and the number one enemy for white, the light square bishop, will be down for the count. So no capture on c3 here. It's queenside castles. Now capture on d4, king b8, bishop d2, bishop's opposite the queen. She ends up going to a3 here. So this was a big opportunity for white to complicate the position and really get at the black king. If white was maybe thinking more about, you know what, let me find a way to just give that piece back and go for an attack against the king in this opposite side's castles position, maybe he would have thought of this move. Plays queen a3 here. This here would have been a beautiful shot. Just dropping the knight in there and poking around now on these dark squares. What do you do? What would Aronian do here with the rook under fire? You move the rook. There's knight c5. You have to stay trained to the bishop here. And now there's a rook lift. This is a completely crushing position for white. Rook b3 right around the corner. If the king goes here, there's bishop b6. How do you defend mate? You go to b8 with the queen. There goes the bishop. White is back to being up a piece. The attack continues, all while the kingside pieces here watch from home. Okay, there is no knight drop into c5 in this game. It's queen a3. Aronian's plan, pressure on the light squares, and really pressure on the clock. Okay, poking around on the light squares still with this light square bishop. Queen is a target. She goes to a4 here. This is also an idea, simplifying it a bit more. Even if you give up a pawn, maybe the bishop can successfully get on this diagonal in the end. He plays it with queen a4, babysitting c6 now, getting out of this file. So with this rook lift especially, this is nearby capture, and there you go, the queen will be lost. King and queen, same file, off of the same file with king a8, knight g3, bishop h3. Computer says at this point, knight e4, really, you should just return to this square. White plays it with knight to f1. Let me throw this position to you as a pop quiz. How would you continue? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, Aronian is back in the game with b5. Now what do you do? If you move the queen in the game, knight a5 is played. We get a queen exchange, simplifies a bit. We go right into an ending. If queen a5 is played, there would be a star move, and that is bishop b4. You see what's happening here? After queen takes bishop, she's attracted to a more vulnerable square. Aronian would have c5 here, targeting the queen, and a checkmate in one threat. Now, it still considers this position here slightly better for white, one where we have this imbalance, but, far from clear game ahead with this imbalance. Queen versus 3 minors. Okay, that would have been a slick follow-up. He had this in mind in response to queen to a5, to be sure. Do know in this position here, trying to just play c5, not going to cut it. There is, keep in mind, rook takes bishop, pairing the mate threat. Okay, it's first b5. White tries knight a5 here. Back in the game, this is considered around an even position now. And right around this stage, white has about 4 minutes. Aronian, about a half-hour advantage. Equal position. Aronian, for the moment, up a pawn. Not the healthiest pawn around, but it's soon going to be completely balanced material-wise. This here, last move, bishop e7. If you try and play c5 at this stage, there's the doubling up, and that pawn will end up 1. So it's important to first have these guys connected, and only then play this c5 idea. There we go. We get right into a rook and pawn ending at this stage. Better to take with the pawn on b6. Some shelter for the king. And really putting pressure on the clock at this stage, Aronian is. Still remains equal in this rook-specific ending. How to treat this last move? White ends up playing f5 here, so I think the general idea is good. Pawn duo created. Usually best to challenge it right away. h4 is also another path, and maybe the one that should come to mind first in general. This is, after all, an isolated pawn. Let's try and exchange off the isolated pawn instead of, this is a healthier group of pawns right here, the f and e pawn. Okay, he goes with f4 here. If h4 was played, and then let's say g4, you can continue with f3 here, simplifying. All right, white plays it with f4 here, and now we have g4. So this is pretty dangerous here, a 2-on-1. How to stop it from going any further? King g3, rook g8, rook e3, and at this point, this is where white goes wrong. A very common point to go wrong in a game. This is move 40 coming up now for white. White ends up playing rook to f2. I should mention there is bonus time once move 40 is reached. Players gain 30 minutes. There is also a 30-second increment throughout this whole game, kicking off from move 1. This move 40 error, white plays rook to f2. Now, a better move would be to, let's say, play rook to d2 here, looking to activate the rook. White's idea, I believe, may have been to anticipate h4 and not have the king kicked away from its defense of f4, or just said a bit more simply, to defend the f4 pawn. But by playing this move, rook to f2, the king is now restricted, and it allows this idea of h4 check, king g2, and rook takes rook in this position would be considered a winning path, a top move. Aronian does not play this one. He plays rook to d1 here, and then white finds himself in an only move situation. This would be a nice way to simplify, though. Getting a rook off, and then simply putting the rook to d8. You can't really tame this piece. It's ready to get to the second rank, and also the fourth rank, pinpointing the f4 pawn. There's not really a way to defend against these two ideas. Do know if we get into a rook and pawn ending, or excuse me, a king and pawn ending, this is completely winning for black. These guys just sit there. There's no way to put pressure on the g4 pawn to influence the duo. You'd have to move the pawn first, but then there's a capture, and you can't recapture on f5 because these guys would bolt. No stopping them. So this king, in this king and pawn endgame position, would be stuck in this area, and the king can simply march up here and track down the pawns and push the b pawn away. Okay, black does not play in this way. Doesn't go for a rook exchange. It's rook d1 here. This allows white one way out. He does not find it. He ends up playing this other rook to the second rank. The only save here for white is to go with f5. What's the point behind f5? Well, when black plays h3 and then rook g1, this king has a central square to work with. We're going to see that the king ends up caught on the edge. Okay, in this game, no f5, rook 3 to e2, h4, rook g1 check, doesn't have access to f4, got to go to the edge, and with these guys still around, a mating net is nearby. Follow-up now is g3, and after rook 1 takes g3, white simply resigns. There's no stopping rook g7 and then pick your favorite rook for mate. This one is over. So, what did you think of this one? Feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.